You're watching Notebook Check Tech Review, where we've got the HP Spectre X2 here. This is an interesting device. This is a Core M7 powered device at a fairly high-end level. So you've got a Core M7 here, a price of around 1,400 euros, 8 gigs of RAM, a 250 gigs SSD. So it's going to be interesting to have a look at this. This is obviously a Surface Pro 4 competitor, but with an M7 rather than the M3, the i5, and the i7 that you get with the the Surface Pro 4. What we're going to do in this video, we're going to take a look around the device. I'm going to give you some details from our Notebook Check test process. So we'll talk about the processor performance. We'll talk about the screen, details on the screen, battery life, a few other things as well. Keyboard, mouse, important things on here. And we'll also talk about connectivity, because this is a kind of a weird device. There's actually no display output on this. There's just two USB-C ports and only USB-C with USB 3.1 Rev 1 behind it, so you don't get the Rev 2 with the display port, sort of native display port connectivity on it. So what I'll show you is an alternative way of connecting an external screen. It's using a traditional method that I've been using for a couple of years on other USB 3 enabled devices. It has nothing to do with USB-C at all. Anyway, let's quickly take a look around the device first. So obviously we've got a 2-in-1 here. Let me just bring that camera in. And the first thing to notice is you've got this interesting stand at the bottom. So just click that up there and you pull the stand up, and that stand goes all the way back to tablet level. So you have got digitizer layer on here. So that's interesting to have this folding back all the way. It's also quite nice to get it completely out of the way as well. It looks pretty good. In fact, it looks very good. The whole build quality here is extremely nice, and I'll talk about that keyboard a little bit more in a minute. But the keyboard itself is mechanical, and there's a really, really big mouse pad there. We've got a full HD screen on this, and as I said, we've got the Core M7 inside. So it's fanless, and the Core M7 is paired with 8 gigs of RAM, and we've got a 256 gigs SSD inside. So fairly high-end specs. Maybe in a couple of years' time that won't be high-end, but that should be good enough for you to do basic HD video editing and entry-level PC gaming. The question is, what happens to the performance of this when it heats up? This is a fanless device, maybe liable to heating, so we'll have a look at that in a minute. So let's have a look at the keyboard then. It's backlit. There's a good millimeter throw on it. There's not much flex in the middle of the device. You can make it flex, but it's a fairly sturdy metal framed device. You've got speakers integrated into the keyboard as well. And in fact, the keyboard itself does weigh a fair bit. It's a little bit heavier than the Surface Pro for Type Cover 3 or Type Cover 4, sorry, keyboard. But it's a nice unit, cloth back, so nice protection there. And connectivity on pogo pins there, and the magnetic fold-up keyboard as well. So very close to the Miix 700, very close to the Surface Pro 3, very close to the Surface Pro 4 design. I think there's been some exchange of licensing going on here in terms of that design. Let's have a quick look at the device around and have a look at the ports. There's that USB-C port there, and nothing else except a headset port, and there's a USB-C port on the other side as well. So that's it, USB-C, and it's not USB-C with USB 3.1 Rev 2 behind it. It's got USB 3.1 Rev 1, which is basically USB 3.0 renamed, and it means it doesn't have that native display connectivity that you'll see on, for example, the Lumia 950 XL that has that dock. That is a standard USB-C 3.1 Rev 2 display dock. What you can do on this, you can use WiDi to connect to an external display, whether your display supports WiDi, or you can add an external adapter as well. Or you can use something like a display link adapter, and I've got one of those here to show you. Here's a fairly high-end display link adapter. I'll just put that in the camera there, and what you'll see is you get a standard USB 3 connection, and then on the back we've got the ports for display link, display port and DVI. And that's just one variant of a display link USB 3 docking station. You can get very small ones starting at around €50. This is €150, and it includes an audio device, gigabit Ethernet device as well. So it's very much sort of one plug plus power, and then you're away with an external screen. So that's quite a nice solution. But it is a solution that's been around for a few years. There's nothing special there, and it is something you'll have to think about in terms of cost. You'll have to buy an additional display adapter for USB if you want to use this on external screens. On the front and back of this device, we have RealSense cameras. So you are able to use Windows Hello login, and you are able to, if you can find some software, or if you're developing for RealSense, do some work with the 3D cameras there. So they'll take depth information along with the camera information as well. We did some work with the camera and the results were pretty good. Take a look at the section on a webcam and the RealSense on the full review at notebookcheck.net for some more information on that. Now to the screen, just pump that up to 100% level there, and we'll go to our display performance results from our test lab done with Kalman measurement tools, and you'll see actually the color is done with the X-Rite measurement tool, but you'll see a black level of 0.44 and a brightness of 353, not that high, giving a contrast of 802. Current good devices are scoring a contrast of over 1,000. That really helps in outdoor viewing situations. Even if you do have high brightness, if you have low contrast, it's very difficult to read the screen. So a contrast of over 1,000 is good, 800 is acceptable, and the brightness 353 there in the middle also fairly acceptable. Deltas on the colors, that's the variation from the true color measured with the Kalman measurement tool, 6.09 and 6.24 for color and grayscale respectively. So again, not brilliant out the box. Levels of 5, deltas of 5 and below are good, tending towards 2 and 1. Very good. So if you have a look at the comparison table there, look at that Surface Pro 4 with deltas of 3.61, 3.8, and in fact I think that's the one the Pro 4 we did post calibration on and got even better scores than that. Surface Book there 2.06 and 2.22, you'll see that there, and that's excellent scores. So the screen, full HD, reasonable contrast, reasonable brightness, reasonable color accuracy. It is a good screen, but it's not a high-end screen. On to performance then. Well, let's just start off with the pure CPU scores. Cinebench 11.5 there, 2.15 points. Now, that's about the same as an Ultrabook from a couple of generations ago, Haswell generation. The Surface Pro 3 comes in a little bit higher than that, around 2.2, 2.3. You'll see, though, compared to the Surface Pro 4, that were a little bit lower than the Core M3. So that's interesting. The Core M7 would come in below the Core M3 there. We'll have a look at the Surface Pro 4 with the Core i7. You're at 3.8 points as well. So that is a very interesting score there on the Surface Pro 4 compared to this Core M7 device that's trying to look like it's going towards the high end. It's not really high end in terms of CPU performance there. Let's have a quick look at the graphics and the SSD, and we'll work out a little summary of performance for you. Right, take a look at the Crystal Mark score there, Crystal Mark 3.0, the read speed sequential 410.1 megabytes per second. That's really good. So this is a fast SSD, and checking the write 4K, which is the other important one, 53.52, sorry. So you won't get any bottlenecks there with the SSD. That's a reasonable speed. Anything over sort of 200 or 300 megabytes per second on a sequential read is good. And we've got devices now using PCI Express modules but coming in over a gigabyte a second. That's almost too much, but of course if you're throwing around big files, and certainly over things like a Thunderbolt connection to an external hard drive that takes those sort of speeds, then it's important to have the internal SSD. Onto graphics then. So that thing, that the CPU, the GPU and the SSD coming together as the three most important aspects of the performance here. HP Spectre X2 gets 4546 points on 3D Mark 2000 513. Look at the Microsoft Surface Pro with the Core i7. So that's a really, truly a high-end Ultrabook style device. 7,822. So there's a lot more performance there. We have actually only got the 520, I believe, in here. The 515. It's a lower clock version of the HT 520. So we haven't even got the high-end 520 in here. So that would have helped things. So it's the 515 that's really pulling it down a little bit in those graphic scores. I'm going to flick forward there to a couple of gaming scores for you. Entry level PC gaming. So your World of Warcraft will be fine, your Minecraft will be fine, but if you get it to anything a little bit higher than that, FIFA 15 for example, on low settings, we managed to get that working at 38 frames a second, so that's acceptable. But anything higher than lower settings, you're in trouble. Don't expect to use this for. Under load test, we did see some throttling, and you'll see information about that, and that's an important aspect if you're doing any sort of gaming, which you probably won't be on this. Video rendering is one thing you might be doing on this. Throttling does occur after a while, so it does get warm, and that's one of the negative points of having a fanless device, is that things do warm up pretty quickly. I will show you the max temperatures there under load. 43.5 on the front, that's around this area here in the middle, and the same on the back, 42. Those figures not too bad. Sorry, I shouldn't be looking at the keyboard, should I? I should be looking at the actual screen. It's here on the screen and at the back in the middle there. We've got a 42 watt hour battery inside and a Core M, so we were expecting some nice battery life figures, certainly idle. Actually not that impressive, 15 hours 54 minutes idle. Now that might be because of background processes that are going on. Of course we load some of our testing apps on here, and I noticed that McAfee was installed in the background as well. Idle testing on new devices is not probably not the best thing to do. You need to let the device update, rest for days before you really can get a nice idle figure out of it, and often cleaning up background tasks, startup tasks helps there. So ignore that idle figure and let's go to Wi-Fi surfing. 6 hours and 1 minute off a 42 watt hour battery. Again, not that brilliant. This is a full HD screen. This is not a quad HD screen, and it's not huge in terms of screen size. So 6 hours 1 minute, not fantastic there. If you look at the comparisons here, the Wi-Fi test, 361 minutes. Surface Pro, okay, you've got a bigger battery on that one, 488 minutes. And the Toshiba Z20, obviously a lot more with the 72 watt hour battery as well. Sorry, Surface Pro 4 with the 38 watt hour battery. That's the second column there. 488 minutes, so 35% more Wi-Fi browsing power. So if I feel there's something going on in the background here, then maybe it needs cleaning up, and maybe we can get more out of that. Load 2 hours 46 minutes. Again, if you're rendering or gaming or doing some crazy stuff like that, that's the sort of maximum battery life you get under those conditions. So as you may have seen at the top of the review, 84% was our overall figure. That's a good score. And here are the pros and cons. Power supply via USB-C. Let me show you the power supply. It's a standard middle PSU unit. So you've got cable all over the place, separate kettle plug, and a USB-C plug that can't be removed. You do get an adapter. There's the adapter. You do get the adapter for a standard USB 3 connectivity. We'll be using that in a minute to demo the USB 3 display link connectivity. It's a robust case. There's a nice keyboard here. Nice, nice working fascia altogether. This is not super high-end screen, but a reasonable screen, keyboard, and mouse pad, touchpad quality there. An advantage for some might be the rear-facing RealSense camera and the front-facing RealSense camera as well. But that really depends on how you're using your device. Windows Hello is obviously one of the advantages there. Photo quality from that RealSense camera also pretty good. So it's fanless and you're getting reasonable performance overall. This isn't something you can compare to the high-end Surface Pro 4. It is something you can compare to the low-end Surface Pro 4. This is €1,400 worth with the 8 gigs of RAM and with 200 gigs of usable SSD storage in here. On the negative points, well, there was a little bit of flex in the casing. You can just see that on the screen there. A little bit of flex in the casing. And the CPU performance isn't the highest. This is an M7, not an i7, so bear that in mind if you're thinking of performance, especially for gaming. This is not a gaming PC. This is an entry-level device. So a good quality office experience, a very good mobile experience. If you're typing on the go, this is a perfect kind of blogging device. You're going to need your USB-C to SD card adapter, of course, but really nice for on-the-go work for typing. Right, what I'm quickly going to do now is show you 2 ways to connect displays off the back of this. The first is going to be wireless using wide-eye. What I've got over in the corner there, let's just move that Surface Book. Surface Book coming up on the review after this, by the way. I've got an Action Tech, and you'll see that there, Screen Beam Pro. All I need to do, and I need to turn this, just turn it that way, is just use the connect function under Windows 10, and that will connect to the screen there. Now, this is a compressed link, so anything going over this is compressed, and there can be some delays as well. Delays depend on the amount of stuff that's moving on the screen at any one time. So when you're using the mouse, it is almost instantaneous, and I would say it's very useful for office scenarios. Videos are going to be delayed a little bit. That doesn't really matter. But if you're using any real-time type of work, like gaming, this is going to give you up to 100 milliseconds of delay. So it's not perfect, but it's good for office work, and it's a very tidy way to connect to your screen. Now, the second way, and we'll just disconnect that one, is the display link port. Sorry, the display link connectivity over USB. So we'll do that now. So this is the display link solution. This is available over USB 2 as well, although I wouldn't recommend it. USB 3 is the best way to do this. And this is a Belkin dock that has the display link display over USB technology built in. So it's software that has to be installed to the PC and a module that runs inside this unit. You can get little ones as well, 50 euros. This is 150. This is a nice solid dock. I've been using this for a couple of years. This is not new technology. And all you do is you just connect the USB 3 there, and you wait. You wait for a few minutes until the drivers have installed, and then what will happen is, if I spin that screen round and put it onto DVI, we should see that screen come up in a few minutes. I'll just fast forward to that on this video. Just finishing the display link software configuration now. It looks like it's working. That should pop up on the screen any second. Now, there you go. Okay, so we've now got a second screen there. Now, in terms of response times, this is near instantaneous and good for video and even a little bit of gaming. There is a little bit of video compression over here, but not as heavy as on the wide-eye solution. So this is obviously not perfect for things like photography work or even high-end video work, but certainly okay for any sort of office work. And I use this for video editing as well. I don't see any major issues there. The only issue there is with display link is that it does take some CPU. I'm just looking here to see what sort of levels of CPU we're using. Very little. Let's just move something around. And it really does affect the low-end PC, some of the smaller tablets. I'm just going to flick that around there, see what we see in terms of usage. We might be getting 1 to 3% CPU utilization out of that, but not much to worry about. So at this point, you can actually take the keyboard off that, stick that onto your dock, and then you can put your standard keyboard and mouse, connect that to that. You can connect Gigabit Ethernet here, and of course I can take that out and I can drop the Surface Pro 3 in or Surface Pro 4 in as I need. So that's a nice flexible solution, and if you really are hot desking with a number of different devices, probably one of the best docking solutions that you can get. So anyway, that is how you get display working over the USB connectors when you don't have USB 3.1 Rev 2 and the standard USB-C 3.1 Rev 2 adapters. It's more confusing than it is simplifying with those connectors. So pull that out of there and we'll put that back onto the keyboard. And that was the HP Spectre X2. We've got the high-end M7 version here with 8 gigs of RAM. And after I've said goodbye, stay tuned, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little PowerDirector 14 render test. It's something I like to do on some of these more mobile devices to see whether you can do HT video editing and rendering without any overheating, and we'll have a look at the throttling as well. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching the video though. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if it was useful for you. Don't forget to subscribe. We're regularly putting up videos into the channel now, and you can get notifications in your mailbox of videos as we put them up. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next Notebook Check Tech Review. Stay here if you want to watch the PowerDirector rendering test. So here's that video rendering test underway already. PowerDirector 14 loaded with the same project files. We're outputting a 16 megabit per second, 50 frames per second, 1080p video. And of course, we've got the Core i7 here with the Surface Book, which runs up to 3 gigs dual core. And we've got the M7, the Core M7, which runs up around to 1.7, 1.8 gigs dual core. And of course the Book is going to beat this, but by how much? This is a very expensive device, 2,600 euros to get this configuration. There is an NVIDIA GPU in the base, of course, but that's not being used for this rendering test, so bear that in mind. We're just using Intel QuickSync here to render out these files. We're going to just fast forward this bit now, and we'll get to the end and we'll see what the differences are. While that's running, I'll take note of the noise and the heat occurring on the back of these devices, and we'll talk about that at the end. So that's the Surface Book 4 with the Core i7 finished in 6 minutes 17 seconds. Obviously the Spectre X2 going on a little bit longer here. That could take another couple of minutes, but interestingly I want to point out some scores from Core i5 Haswell generation CPU on the Surface Pro 3. Now that ranges between 10 and 14 minutes for a render. And that's really based on how warm it is and the ambient temperature. The Surface Book 4 doesn't seem to downclock when it gets warm. The fan kicks in, there's a little bit of noise, and there's quite a bit of heat on the back of the device here, but it doesn't downclock. So this is really nice for long-term work. And that 654 is a really nice, one of the best figures for this test I've seen. Now this is actually quite good, because the Surface Pro 3, when cold, will only do a minimum of 10 minutes. And it looks like we'll come in at around 9 minutes on this. I'm seeing some downclocking now. This has warmed up a fair bit on the back, and it's downclocked from what we were seeing 1.7 at the start to 1.4, 1.3. It's up to 1.62 again now. But there's certainly a little bit of downclocking going on, slowing that down. But it's a really interesting score, though. For a silent device, it doesn't seem to be downclocking too much. And that Intel QuickSync really working well to get that video render out. So what I will do, I'll just let that run through. In another video following this, I'm going to put the Surface Book up against the Surface Pro 3, up against the Lenovo Miix 700, and against the Spectre X2. That's 4 different CPUs. 3 of those are Skylake. That will be the M5 of the Miix 700, the M7 of the Spectre X2, and the Core i7 of the Surface Book. So we'll see how we get to differences in the rendering speeds here. So obviously this is just for video users. If you're rendering out on these devices, certainly no problem doing HD video editing on the Core M, as long as you're not doing too many effects, post-processing, color adaptations, and too many layers of overlay. We're only talking about maximum about 3 layers of overlay here. So that's fairly basic, but YouTube standard, and the way I generally do videos here in the studio. I don't do too much color correction and too much optimization of filtering and effects on my videos. So that's a good comparison there. This has just come up to the end. 8 minutes 54, so just under 9 minutes. I have done this test before. We got it about 8:30. That was from cold, and this was obviously a little bit warmer. And remember, we're also charging at the same time. That generates more heat. In this unit, the charging heat is probably occurring towards the base because the battery is in the base unit, or the main battery. And in this unit, obviously charging occurring in the tablet unit itself. So that's warming the device up a bit more. So there's a video render test, Core i7 Skylake against Core M7 Skylake. You can see the difference there. Not much, but certainly the Transformer book is the long-term powerhouse. It really depends though. 20%, 30% faster for about twice the cost in this case. Okay, there's an NVIDIA GPU in there as well. It wasn't being used for this test, right? By the way, that's switched off under Cyberlink PowerDirector 14. That's not enabled. Right. Don't forget to watch that second video. I'll put the link up there for you, so you can just quickly flick to that video and watch the second video render test. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like if you get anything out of the video. Comments below on YouTube, and we'll see you on the next Nobocheck Tech Review.